Overnight, I confirmed my attendance at the Glasgow summit, which I'm looking forward to attending. It's an important event. The government will be finalising its position for me to take to that summit prior to my departure over the next fortnight. We are working through those issues with our cabinet and with our colleagues, and I look forward to those discussions concluding over the next couple of weeks. And I simply say to everyone that net zero was an outcome that I outlined at the beginning of this year, consistent with our Paris commitments. The challenge is not about the if and the when, the challenge is about the how. And I'm very focused on the how, because the global changes that are happening in our economy as a result of the response to climate change have a real impact, and they will have a real impact here in Australia. And the plan that I'm taking forward, together with my colleagues, is about ensuring that our regions are strong, that our regions' jobs are not only protected, but they have opportunities for the future. It's not just about hitting net zero. That's an important environmental goal. But what's important is Australia's economy goes from strength to strength, and the livelihoods and the lives that Australians know, particularly in rural and regional areas, are able to go forward with hope and with confidence. And that's what my plan will be all about, and I look forward to furthering those discussions in the weeks ahead. Happy to take some questions.
Home quarantine as well, and he said for Australians and international travellers.
The Premier and I, and indeed prior to him becoming Premier and in earlier discussions I've had with ministers in the New South Wales government, this has been a topic of discussion for some time. And so I welcome the announcement today. It is consistent with the advice I have from my own Chief Medical Officer. And so we're looking forward to those arrangements coming into place. As I said, I'd written to all the premiers and chief ministers earlier this week, and also consistent with the decision of the National Security Committee, asking them to confirm the arrangements they would have, so we could make a decision about whether and when Australians would be able to travel overseas again and return. And the Premier wrote back to me today and confirmed that would be on 1st of November and under those no quarantine arrangements for vaccinated Australians.
Does it concern you that home quarantine so soon after only recently starting the home quarantine trial? Would you have liked that to run out a bit longer before they made a call like this?
Well, we're not opening up to everyone coming back to Australia at the moment. I want to be clear about that. We're going to take this forward in a staged and careful way, as we've done all of these things. It's for the Commonwealth Government, the federal government, to decide when the border opens and shuts at an international level, and we will do that. In the first instance, it will be for Australians, Australian residents and their families. We'll see how that goes, and then we'll move to the other priorities, which I've already set out as being skilled migration, as well as students to Australia, and then we'll move on to the challenge of dealing with international visitors to Australia. So everything all in good time. We're not rushing into this. We're taking it carefully, step by step. I welcome the decision in New South Wales. It's showing another strong step forward, and I think it enables us to progress.
Will unvaccinated Australians be
There is a 210 cap per week in New South Wales for unvaccinated Australians to come back, which was confirmed to be by the New South Wales government, and I'm looking forward to confirmation of those other numbers from other state premiers in response to my letter earlier this week.
Western Australia is talking about keeping its border closed until next year. How sustainable is that?
Well, it all depends on the vaccination. Well, it all depends on the vaccination rates, and that's what the national plan provides for. And when we reach 70 and 80% vaccination rates under the national plan, that gives us the opportunity to take the next steps. Now, Western Australia is not at the stage of New South Wales yet, neither is any other state or territory. I'm looking forward to them getting to that level, because that means they will then have those options that people in New South Wales will have from the 1st of November.
New South Wales Prime Minister, could I book a flight to Bali on the 1st of November and then come back in without quarantining?
Out of New South Wales? Yes.
So New South Wales wants travellers and international students back from November 1. That won't be able to happen?
No, the federal government is not opening it up to anything other than Australian citizens and residents and their immediate families. That is what will happen from the 1st of November in New South Wales, and indeed all around the country for Australians departing. To return to Australia, obviously they'd have to do that through Sydney or under the capped arrangements in other states and territories.
So when will international travellers and international students be able to come back to Australia?
Not yet.
Was the Premier a little bit tourists and other international travellers that could be coming in from that time?
No, what the Premier did today was advise me and announce today that when international students, when international travellers, when skilled migrants are permitted to return to Australia by the Commonwealth Government, then they will not be required to quarantine when they come. The Premier understands that that's a decision for the Commonwealth Government, not for the state governments, and when we believe that's the right decision to make, we'll make it at that time. I'm going to progress steadily, but at the same time carefully, and I welcome this first step. I think it's a positive step.
In trials, South Australia, Victoria.
No, I think each state and territory will make their judgments about that. We'll continue to support those trials. I think it's good to have a range of options that are being pursued by the states and territories. Remember, no state or territory is coming from the same place. They're all starting in different positions with different rates of COVID in their states and territories. And indeed, I understand today in Tasmania, they're going into a very short lockdown. They're still in phase A. And it's a reminder, wherever you are in Australia, please get vaccinated.
The opening of domestic borders, might scare other state and territory leaders into not opening their borders if New South Wales is welcoming people without quarantine.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I don't think there's any justification for that, particularly as we are only extending this to Australian resident citizens and their immediate families. It's not extending more broadly than that, which would obviously have a much greater volume. It is constrained to that volume of Australian citizen residents returning, which I'm sure all premiers and chief ministers want Australians to be able to come home. Well, I think the weather may be about to beat us. Sure.
Taking a concrete emissions target or a plan for a target?
Our position will be set out before I leave for Glasgow. Thanks very much, everyone.